but the Cowboys have not named Javonte Williams the starting running back yet. You have some takeaways here.
Offensive coordinator Clayton Adams was asked about how Javonte Williams has stood out amongst the running back room. And he said, I think experience and wisdom. He's had really good years. He's a mature guy that has good wisdom. Question on a tee of like, hey, tell us what you love about this player. Tell us what makes them good. What makes them stand out from this running back room? And you're basically saying, oh, he'd be a really nice guy for your daughter to date. That's not a great signal.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
The latest preseason news that fantasy managers need to know. We're joined today by Greg Brainos, CoachSpeak Index. I'm Theo Gremminger, Fantasy Football Daily on the Fantasy Points Podcast Network. Greg, you've built like a behemoth on CoachSpeak Index. You have like your own niche, and you have this incredible information that you're dropping where you're sort of sifting through what is true, what is false, and really what's important for fantasy managers in today's information age. Let's start out right at the top. Coming off of preseason usage for Brock Bowers, where you had some pretty big accounts on X talking about Brock Bowers not being a value in the second round of drafts. I nearly spit out my coffee when I read it, and I certainly disagreed with it. Brock Bowers to the moon, where I come from. How about for you?
Yeah, I was not drinking coffee when I read it, but it made me want to drink coffee and spit it out. It's so wild. Like, we throw around the term generational talent all the time, right? But Brock Bowers is truly a generational talent at the tight end position. 112 catches last year, rookie record, broke Puka's record. 1,194 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns in his rookie season with a terrible head coach, terrible offensive coordinators, terrible quarterbacks. Now he has this huge upgrade at all three of those in this fast-paced Chip Kelly offense, and now we want to be out on him because of his usage in a preseason game. This is absolute insanity to think that the Raiders are not going to feature this guy. And I've got like a few quotes for you here from the CoachSpeak Index Discord. May 21st, this is Pete Carroll, said Geno Smith already knows where Brock Bowers is on the field. He's found him a ton of times already. Brock just makes himself so available. Quote, he's a big part of the offense for sure, end quote. May 29th, offensive coordinator Chip Kelly. Brock Bowers is as advertised, unbelievable work ethic and attention to detail. All the things you're looking for in a player, along with a unique skill set. To have a guy that big and that athletic who moves in that way is special. We're really excited about what he can bring to us. July 24th, Chip Kelly again. Brock Bowers can go deep and he can catch shallow routes. He's just such a special weapon. You can use him in a lot of different ways. He's a special player, so we're really excited about him. Finally, August 17th, Pete Carroll says, Brock Bowers is so adept at making throws look like they're exactly the right throw by the way he moves. Geno Smith throws the ball downfield really well, and our top guys, Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, are taking advantage of that, making it look easy almost. So incredible coach speak on the guy. Special weapon, unique guy. They want to use him as he should be used, as he was used last year in a worse offense, in a worse system. Like, this is crazy to think that they see what this guy is capable of. Like, he's not coming out of college, right? It's not like last year where you're wondering, oh, how is this going to work? Yeah, he was good in college, but can he do it in the NFL? He already did it in the NFL, and we're thinking he can't do it again this year in a better situation. Crazy.
Yeah, and when you mentioned like Pete Carroll, all the coach speak quotes, Pete Carroll doesn't take the Las Vegas Raiders job unless there's sort of the enthusiasm levels for Brock Bowers, because when he took that job, they didn't have any clarity at the quarterback position. Maybe he knew on the back end that they could get a Geno Smith deal done. Who knows there? But with you have Chip Kelly coming from Ohio State. You have Pete Carroll coming out of retirement. their win now guys. Brock Bowers is certainly going to be the focal point of the offense along with Ashton Genty. You referenced Jacoby Myers, where Jacoby Myers is certainly a wide receiver 2 on almost every other team, and he's a wide receiver 3 on some teams. He is a wide receiver 1, sort of an opportunistic wide receiver 1 in this offense, where Myers is a fine player. But at the end of the day, Brock Bowers, if we just took 153 targets and we put that on a rookie wide receiver, we gave him 112 catches, I think we get really almost more excited about the profile. But it's the tight end position where people don't always think they're going to extract value. It doesn't have to be difficult this year. Brock Bowers, if you can get him in the second round, it not only gives you an impact player that gives you an edge at a one-off position, but it helps you avoid landmines. It's almost impossible to see Brock Bowers sort of failing to produce, whereas you factor in some running backs, certainly running backs more susceptible to injuries. Running backs can have some regression. And then, end of the second round wide receivers, I'd argue that Brock Bowers has a higher target ceiling than A.J. Brown, a higher target ceiling than Ladd McConkey, LA versus Vegas here. So for me, I'm Brock Bowers, unbelievable player. And it just it's the silly season, Greg. Like, we've been drafting all summer long, and we're actually going to see an ADP go down because of preseason usage. Just seems just so ridiculous. It's anything sort of to add on the Bowers situation. And how often have you been clicking the button, let's say on Bowers at ADP, you're drafting a ton of underdog. He's going off 18 overall on underdog. Occasionally, like you said, there's some one-off situations where he falls a little later, but when he's on the clock at cost, how often are you clicking the button?
Very, very often. I do go kind of back and forth between he and AJ Brown a little bit. I have, I believe, 11% Brock Bowers right now. I'd have more if I wasn't getting so many 101s on underdog. I have like 14% Jamar Chase, but I think he's an incredible pick in the middle of the second round. I think he's a good pick, early in the second round. But I mean, it's truly a gift when he falls in, later in that second round.
We're going to be talking about the Indianapolis Colts a couple of times on this show because there's some recent developments, but specifically Tyler Warren. We've had back-to-back seasons with a tight end finishing as the tight end 1 overall with a really high number of targets. We saw Sam Laporta 2 seasons ago go north of 120, had that really special season in Detroit. Last year, obviously, Bowers. Tyler Warren is steaming up. Certainly for FFPC drafters, you're starting to see him inside of round 6 pretty consistently. Now you're starting to see him come up in pretty much every PPR format. The vibes are pretty strong there. What's the coach speak telling you? What's sort of the slow drip, and what's your vibes with Warren this year? We're not going to put it on him to have a Laporta Bowers type season, but I think realistically, he can be a top 6, top 8 scorer at the tight end position.
I think next year in fantasy, we could be talking about Tyler Warren as one of the elite tight end options. The Colts have been publicly thirsting for a wide tight end like this for well over a year. They wanted Brock Bowers last year, missed out on that. And then this year before the draft, like they're talking about that, they're telegraphing that they want a wide tight end. They want this, Antonio Gates type guy. They want this Jack Doyle type guy who gives them these really big mismatches in the middle of the field against linebackers, against safeties. And, we see Anthony Richardson in the preseason working more on the intermediate stuff. We see all these manufactured touches for Tyler Warren in the preseason. We see the deep shots to Tyler Warren in the preseason. They have such big plans for him. And I've got a bunch of quotes here on them that I'll just blaze through real quick. This was right after the Colts drafted Tyler Warren. Their general manager, Chris Ballard, said Tyler Warren was an easy pick. There was not a lot of discussion. Quote, I think Shane will find unique ways to use him, end quote. He's one of those guys who's always open. That's part of his uniqueness. His hands are pretty rare. I thought he had the best hands of any player in the draft. He's a unique dude. Shane Steichen, after the draft, said Tyler Warren can do it all. Talked about how physical he is with the ball in his hands. all the yak that he can get, how he's this big target who plays above the rim. When guys are on him, he is still open. They keep talking about how incredible his hands are. And of course, we see the clips from training camp of all these amazing catches that he's making with people draped all over him. Shane Steichen on May 10th says, we'll have some fun with all the things Tyler Warren is able to do. Offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter on July 29th was talking about how much they're putting on Tyler Warren's plate. He's going to be a very versatile piece for us. We're going to try a bunch of different stuff with him, give him a bunch of shots at a bunch of different aspects of playing offensive football. I think he's going to do a bunch of it really, really well. Shane Steichen on August 10th, just talking about how Tyler Warren has such a natural feel for the game, this awareness for zones and voids in the defense when he's running routes, which, by the way, we have seen in the preseason already against vanilla defenses, but still, like, it's so bullish, all the downfield stuff that he was doing, because we know he can do the intermediate, and we know he's going to be doing the intermediate and that short manufactured stuff, the little bubble screens, but then for him to also be doing it downfield, so big. They love his blocking. And then finally, Shane Steichen on August 14th says, we know that when the ball is in Tyler Warren's vicinity, he's got a high percentage of catching the football. You saw it on tape, but to see it up close and personal through OTAs and training camp, it's impressive. Anytime you have a tight end like that, getting those matchups over the middle against linebackers and safeties makes the quarterback's life a lot easier. They are so big on Tyler Warren, and it is very clear that he is going to be a pillar of this offense for the Colts this year.
Yeah, and when it comes to Warren, like, there's a lot of wide receivers on Indianapolis this year. Josh Downs, who's banged up right now. Michael Pittman, who's way healthier than he was last season when he was dealing with all sorts of injuries. Adonai Mitchell, we easily could have talked about on this show. I talked about him with Bob Harris last week about his, like, sort of making an impact in preseason. And then certainly Alec Pierce. But the pedigree of Tyler Warren exceeds any of these wide receivers in terms of draft capital. Warren was a player that was unbelievably successful at Penn State. And a thing that sort of stands out to me with Warren is we've had these sort of Taysom Hill-esque runs sort of rumored, which is something that I feel like we'll see during the regular season. It could be a game-specific, like, game plan to use Tyler Warren as sort of a battering ram up the middle, just mix him in certain situations. So we could factor in maybe 10 or more rushing attempts this season. Penn State has multiple future NFL running backs, and last year they still used Warren on the ground as sort of a de facto wildcat type situation. So obviously that would be something that I think would be a little more prominent if it was Daniel Jones behind center. But I think regardless of who's playing quarterback, it's just an enthusiasm level for Warren where you feel like you're getting upside, and he's going in a range of drafts where it's not like the opportunity cost is that much. I'll go a little head-to-head ADP for you personally with your own exposure. Tyler Warren right now is settled in on underdog as the tight end 8 overall. I think this is pretty similar to where he'd be going on NFFC, FFPC in terms of, like, the hierarchy at the position. Where are you on Tyler Warren versus Evan Ingram, who had a 58-yard reception the other day in their preseason game?
Yeah, I have Tyler Warren ranked, like, pretty well ahead of Evan Ingram.
Okay, so we'll go Tyler Warren versus Mark Andrews.
I just flipped Tyler Warren above Mark Andrews in my rankings.
Okay, here's the fun one for the old heads in the chat. Tyler Warren or Travis Kelce?
Man, I actually thought about this for a long time before it looked like Rashee Rice could miss, 8 to 10 games. I would have Tyler Warren ahead of Travis Kelce. The fact that Rice might miss a bunch of games, including maybe the fantasy playoffs, it's really tough for me. I think Kelce could eat one more year in that intermediate part of the field and just get spammed a lot of targets there. So it's very, very close. I think I have them, like, literally back to back in my full rankings.
Yeah, and that shows you sort of the enthusiasm level. Kelce came up a lot in ADP when it looked like Rashee Rice was going to miss the beginning of the season. What's actually interesting is last year in games where Rice played, Kelce only averaged like 3.5 receptions per game. And then, of course, when Rice went down with the injury, Kelce's scoring kind of ticked up a lot. So I just think with Kelce, he's a weird one for me, Greg, because I don't get that front-loaded production that I thought I was getting a couple of weeks ago, where he was sort of the number one read, the first down maker in the offense early. And then it's like the whole notion that this 36-year-old scoring is going to take off over the second half of the year, where I have doubts about that. If Kansas City's in a position where they're their usual like 10-2, they're thinking about the playoffs, they're thinking about another Super Bowl run, do they have a little bit of load management with a player that's Kelce's age and experience? I don't know. That sort of thing runs through my head. Whereas I think Warren could just get off to a fast start and then kind of keep going with it. So I think that's kind of shows you where we're at with Tyler Warren. Really, really, really fun player. Greg, what do you have going on this time of year? What do you have during the season for the CSI?
I'm just watching a ton of press conferences and putting all of those notes into the CoachSpeak Index Discord. Every important note from every head coach, offensive coordinator, general manager. It's 30 plus hours of press conferences per week. And I'm curating everything that you need to know that comes out of those pressers. It's, extremely important information, a lot of stuff that goes under the radar that is not tweeted out by, people covering the teams or analysts or other people. There's just a lot of super important, super crucial information. Evan Silva, you've probably heard, called it the most important resource or the best resource in all of fantasy football. It's a huge, huge edge. People that get in there say, man, I cannot believe that I was not in here before. It's a crazy edge, man.
Yeah, and you've gotten big shout outs from like massive places, Field Yates, Matthew Berry. Everyone uses the CoachSpeak Index. It should absolutely, if you're not following Greg and seeing sort of what he's dropping, I'll say you're invaluable during the season. You're also invaluable sort of around NFL draft time, the free agency. It's sort of it's like the cyclical year-round nature of fantasy football and NFL football. Like you've become like your own part of it. So big shout out to you. And I'm really excited to see sort of where you're going over the next year. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the streams have been really fun. Talk about your underdog drafts.
Yeah, they've been fun, man. Got some great people. Had you on there. That was an awesome team that we drafted together. I think this week is going to be my final one because I don't have a lot of Best Ball Mania drafts left. I've got maybe like 30 some left. I'd like to be able to do some of my own, not just with other people. So Ben Solak, doing one with him this week. That might be the final one. But yeah, I've had such a great time chopping it up with everybody, drafting teams with them. The Best Ball karaoke stuff was really fun. But there's just so much going on at this point of the season during training camp. And yeah, I gotta watch these pressers, man, because they don't stop just because I'm doing a live stream.
Yeah, nothing stops for drafts, that's for sure. I'm in the slow draft lifestyle this time of year, but this week I have a bunch of live drafts as well. So trying to balance it all out. But hey, man, we only have 3 weeks left, so time to get those drafts in. One player who could come up in ADP based on some actually very direct coach speak, because it's going to be a press conference where Indianapolis is supposedly going to name a starter. The latest is Shane Steichen said they are very close to a decision in the Colts QB race. We are recording this on Monday. This will drop as a podcast on Wednesday. So if Indianapolis has named a quarterback, it's not like Greg and I missed it. It's just the way it goes in terms of recording. What is your lean here? Is it going to be Anthony Richardson? Is there a chance it could still be Daniel Jones? Any sort of coach speak lately with Anthony Richardson positivity?
I mean, they definitely like how much he has improved. They said, you can tell the work that he's put in this offseason. we all saw in the preseason game, he looked pretty nice on those intermediate throws, that little bootleg to the left on the run, just like a perfect throw there, throws that he was missing last year, like really layup type stuff, and looks much better. Who knows if that will last an entire season? Maybe he was just, a little blip, a little spurt of playing well. But I do think it's going to be Anthony Richardson starting. I think it needs to be Anthony Richardson starting. I think they need to succeed with him. I don't see Daniel Jones taking this team to the playoffs. We've seen Daniel Jones. He is not good. He's very bad. So Anthony Richardson may not be a good quarterback, but Daniel Jones is not a good quarterback either. This is a guy who has not looked good in a long time and has not looked good since he had that big neck injury. So to put your eggs in the Daniel Jones basket, you were just begging to be fired at the end of the season. So I think they have to make it work with Anthony Richardson. Now, if he flops during the season and they're losing games, then of course they'll have to turn to Daniel Jones, kind of the same way that they did last year with Joe Flacco. But Flacco looked terrible when he was in there, and they had to put Anthony Richardson back in. Chris Ballard during the offseason said, I think both of these quarterbacks are going to help us at some point. That doesn't show a lot of confidence in your quarterback room when you're saying that. But yeah, I think I think they have to succeed with Anthony Richardson to keep their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of with Anthony Richardson, we talked about Tyler Warren. We talked about just the vibes with Indianapolis, where we mentioned all those wide receivers. Richardson is 23 years old. So for me, did the presence of Daniel Jones did the competition in preseason, in training camp, did Richardson sort of rise to the occasion, or was it he's just better than Daniel Jones? I don't think we fully know that, because we're not, there inside out. We're getting like sort of bits and pieces. We're not inside with the coaches 24/7. But if it's the latter and he rose to the like a higher level because of the competition presented to him by a viable threat in Daniel Jones, I kind of like that. And we talk about Tyler Warren. With as high as you are on Tyler Warren, Anthony Richardson's never going to be a guy that's going to light the world on fire as a passer, and certainly anything, he's been far from it. He was a sub 50% completion passer. What if the easy button target of Tyler Warren plus a guy like Adonai Mitchell being another downfield threat just sort of opens things up underneath, gets a fully healthy Josh Downs? What if he becomes a, dare I say it, 60% completion rate this year, jumps about 10, 11% completion rate percentage? How highly could Anthony Richardson score at the quarterback position, assuming that he can also hold on to this starting position? Right now, he's come up. He's up to QB 26 in ADP. I think the moment that he is named the starter, I think he'll leapfrog Geno, probably going to leapfrog Tua, and could leapfrog Cam Ward. Bryce Young, there'll be a little bit of resistance. Michael Penix, a little bit of resistance. But I think he could reach sort of QB 21 level. Where would you be at on Richardson? Would you still have just a lot of apprehension about him losing the job at some point? Or do you think with some of those traits, he could end up having a better than anticipated fantasy season?
Well, it's kind of two different things for different formats, right? So for best ball, I don't know if I would get to the point where I'm comfortable taking him as, a second QB and then just calling it a day there. Like maybe with the Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson, something like that, where I know that first guy is going to get like most of the stuff. I think he's excellent as a QB3 in builds. In fact, I think I did one last night with like Patrick Mahomes and like Justin Herbert, and then added Anthony Richardson onto the end there. In redraft, it's pretty nice to get him late, because like if he's not starting, you just don't start him, right? Like you use another QB. But if he is starting, that's a lot of fantasy points that you're getting at the QB position at a really late pick.
Yeah, Richardson, like if you have him, especially a month ago, 2 months ago, as your QB3 on Underdog, you are feeling fantastic if he's named the starter. because he is going to give you those big spike weeks. And I love your take about redraft where streaming could be viable. Again, Richardson has put up a bunch of spike weeks. It's just a matter of consistent scoring, but he is a player that can absolutely affect the week. Another quarterback who is really cheap right now, there was a lot of injury concerns with Matthew Stafford, but the time we're recording this, he actually returned to practice on Monday. So the idea that Stafford something, off the cuff catastrophic was going to be announced, that ship sort of sailed for a lot of people. A lot of people sort of had real gloom and doom vibes with this. I remember last week I talked about Stafford, like, how do we have to affect these guys like Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams? Should we adjust our rankings if it's Jimmy Garoppolo? Now it's sort of, I'm going to never get that 5-10 minutes back, Greg, because he's back on the practice field. You at least feel really strongly about Matthew Stafford for week one, for the early portion of the year. Obviously, you're not an injury expert, but what are your general vibes on, is this a pain management issue for Stafford? Is this something where it's a veteran who just knows what he's doing here and we should trust it? Or should we still have a little bit of apprehension about Rams skill position players with sort of lingering health concerns with Stafford hanging over our head?
Yeah, I can't believe people overreacted to something in the offseason. We get the Airstream trailer thing out there.
That was odd. That was odd.
Well,
I mean, that was very cool, but it was odd.
But Sean McVay explained in his press conference that this is not something for Matthew Stafford. This is something for all of our players. We like to stay kind of on the cutting edge of technology, and this is something that has red light therapy and a bunch of other modalities, and Stafford wasn't actually in there for his back. He was just using it, like all the other players have been using this thing. And then we also got this tweet over the weekend that somebody asked the Rams PR person if Stafford actually worked out on Saturday, and he deferred comment to head coach Sean McVay, and people were reading way too much into that when that's the correct order of things. When you're asked about a player on the team and his health status, you say that's something for the head coach, right? When an offensive coordinator even is asked about the health status of a player, they always defer that stuff to the head coach. That's who talks about injuries. It's not the PR person's place to let people know what's going on with Matthew Stafford's back. As far as the concerns, I do think I've maintained, I believe he'll be ready for week one. Sean McVay has really laid things out very clearly of what they're doing here. They're being extremely cautious with him. Peter Schrager said something to that same effect this past week. And Peter Schrager, by the way, very, very good friends with Sean McVay for a long time since Washington. So he is very much in the know. And it's tough, right? Because Matthew Stafford, we know what a gamer he is. I think a lot of older people remember in Detroit that one game where it was, I think maybe like a fractured collarbone or something. Like he takes this huge hit, like really messes up his shoulder, and they're like, okay, you got to come out. He's like, no, I'm staying on the field. We're going for this, 2-point conversion or whatever. They win the game. Just super, super tough guy. But then there are some things that you just can't overcome, right? If this back thing becomes an issue because someone comes on his blind side because their left tackle Alaric Jackson isn't playing with his blood clot issues that he has going on right now, and Stafford takes a nasty hit, then that could like really aggravate things in a serious way. So I think there's like a, I don't know how high the re-injury risk is during the season. I'll pull out the Jim Harbaugh quote. I'm not medically qualified. I'm not a doctor, but it is there. I think we need to all realize that it is there. And just because, he'll suit up for week one doesn't mean that you're going to have a healthy Matthew Stafford for all 17 games. And that's the other thing is, like, even if he's playing, he might not be 100% for these games. And we might see, sort of a a drop and play. We might see them get a little more run heavy. McVay talking about all the how much he admired Liam Cohen's offense last year and the run game that they had there, and the variety of things that they did with the run game. Maybe we see a little more Jarquez Hunter this year, to see them lean into the run a little bit. It's really interesting. I'm below ADP on Matthew Stafford, even though I believe he will play week 1.
Yeah, I think I'm certainly below ADP on Stafford now. Earlier in the summer, I was more enthusiastic, and now I'm sort of finding ways not to draft him. I think with Adams, I think with Nakua, they're going to be so consolidated that even if it's Jimmy G, those guys are still going to produce. Obviously, the ceiling outcome for those guys would maybe not be as prominent. And maybe this is just me overblowing it. I know Bob Harris certainly disagreed with me on that one. He thought that Jimmy G could sort of produce with those two guys, but Stafford has been such a huge part of the McVay offense. I hate these sort of question marks heading in the year, but again, a big positive for him to return to the field. One more quarterback very quickly. What's your vibes on CJ Stroud right now? It seems like it's a punitive ADP. We talked about Richardson. With Stroud, he was also drafted very highly last year. Now he's going off the board as the QB 20. There seems to be some very fun vibes about the quality of the wide receiver position in Houston, potentially a CJ Stroud bounce back, and we see him take his game as a passer to another level this year with a little bit more pass-happy approach under new offensive coordinator Nick Caley.
Yeah, I keep talking about how in 2023, in CJ Stroud's rookie year, they just were being very stubborn about trying to run the ball, even though they were not being effective with it. Classic Bobby Slowick. We're gonna cross our fingers and we're gonna run the ball and we'll see what happens. And then their head coach, D'Amico Ryans, at one point said, if the run game is not working, then we're just gonna have to pass it. And I got the feeling that he leaned on Slowick a little bit to be more pass happy, which they started passing more. And then we got this really nice season out of CJ Stroud. They end up moving on from Bobby Slowick after this last season. And like you said, they get this new offensive coordinator, Nick Caley. Their run game right now does not inspire a lot of confidence. Their offensive line doesn't look like it's going to be that good of an offensive line. So yeah, this might be an offense that is just forced to pass. And I do think CJ Stroud is a very solid quarterback. So they have some real talent in that wide receiver room now. We know what an absolute alpha Nico Collins is. And I think Christian Kirk still has some stuff left in the tank. And then, maybe one, maybe two of these rookie wide receivers and Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel end up being a hit for these guys.
Yeah, I think for me, it's Stroud, I think, could pass for 30 touchdowns. And if he passes for 30 touchdowns, him beating QB 20 is a given. I think he could end up beating QB 20 by a significant amount. And I think there's a potential he could end up being one of these guys drafted as a low-end QB 2 who finishes as a low-end QB 1. Let's talk about a couple of these backfields, Greg, specifically the Dallas Cowboys, where we had a period of time where it seemed like Javonte is the unquestioned shoe-in type, where he had a week-long period where a lot of beat reporters sort of insinuating it has to be Javonte Williams. A lot of fantasy analysts sort of saying, yeah, it's going to be Javonte Williams. But the Cowboys have not named Javonte Williams the starting running back yet. You have some takeaways here.
Yeah, well, right. We got that tweet. I think it was from John
Machota, right?
Yeah. And it said that Javonte Williams has been running with the ones, and then a bunch of analysts, quote tweeted Javonte Williams RB1. Well, again, I talk about context all the time. Let's look at the context here. Miles Sanders was not practicing. Jaden Blue was not practicing. So who was left? Phil Maffa, who was a 7th round pick there. Deuce Vaughn, who's 4'8" and part of the Lollipop Guild. Yeah, okay, sure. He's running with the ones, whatever. Here, this is more important here. On August 11th, head coach Brian Schottenheimer and offensive coordinator Clayton Adams were both asked about Javonte Williams. Schottenheimer was asked whether Javonte Williams is the starter. Schottenheimer said, I'm not going to name the starter right now. Javonte's having a great camp. I'm not going to say he's the starter, but Javonte's having a hell of a camp. I love his professionalism. I love everything he does. He's so smart. And then offensive coordinator Clayton Adams was asked about how Javonte Williams has stood out amongst the running back room. And he said, I think experience and wisdom. He's had really good years. He's a mature guy that has good wisdom. When these coaches are talking about players, not as being standout play, and they're being set up, just question on a tee of like, hey, tell us what you love about this player. Tell us what makes them good. What makes them stand out from this running back room? And you're basically saying, oh, he'd be a really nice guy for your daughter to date. That's not a great signal. We want them talking about, yeah, this guy's a starter. This guy's the lead in the room right now. I love his vision.
I don't want to hear the word wisdom.
Yeah.
Well, it makes the guy sound. You're making a guy sound way old when you reference his wisdom too. It's like, how about you use the word like Javonte looks bursty. He looks like pre-injury. Like that'll get us excited. I mean,
he looks like his old self.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easy. If somebody's trying to set you up on a date and they said that this person's very wise, has a lot of wisdom, you're like, okay, how old is this person? So
right.
That's sort of my vibe I get there. Does that making you click the button on Jaden Blue?
Yeah, I think Jaden Blue is a good pick at cost right now because, of course, he's going late, and when you look at that running back room, who really stands out? Like this question of, how is this person standing out? Jaden Blue has incredible top end speed. Okay, so that immediately. Like that's something that Javonte Williams does not have. That's something that Miles Sanders does not have. Phil Moffitt does not have that. Deuce Vaughn, Hunter Lepke, none of those guys have the speed that Jaden Blue has. There were questions about his work ethic and what have you during OTAs, but that's apparently something that has been, he's well past that at this point. They're talking about, he's very much studying now. He knows the standard here, and he is meeting that. So I would love to see him on the field and healthy. He's dealing with an injury right now. I don't know if we're going to see him in their third preseason game or not. And maybe it's something that takes a little bit of time for him to, get on the field, prove himself. Maybe it's kind of a later half of the season type thing. I am a little bit afraid of just the Cowboys backfield in general because they do love Hunter Lepke. So I think that's a guy that's going to leech a little bit some of these snaps. I think they really like him on kind of the third down stuff. He's a really good pass protector. Javonte Williams is as well. But Kavontae Turpin has also been mixing in during camp at running back. They've talked about cross-training Kavontae Turpin at running back, and how as a returner he has such excellent vision, and that's something that in the backfield can be used as well, kind of the way that we're seeing the Saints use Velus Jones now. So I do think it could be pretty muddy. I'm not sure it's a situation I would really want to touch in redraft. I think a guy would just have to prove he is absolutely head and shoulders above everybody else in this backfield for to be comfortable playing that guy.
Yeah, it feels like a mess. And I'll say that the only player that I'm interested in is Blue, because again, if we do have some attrition in the backfield and Blue's role grows a little bit, he's got the speed, he's got the pass catching ability. Whereas some of these other guys like Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, even if they're fully healthy and the starter, they might be a kind of player ranked like that we would go into the weekly rankings and say that's the RB 31 on the week. And all of a sudden he's like finishes as the RB 28, the RB 34, and it's sort of a negative start for you. You don't really get an impactful number there. You also bring up the fact that it could just be a really ugly committee. Dallas, I think the way you approach them in drafts is easily just the passing game. Enthusiasm for the big two wide receivers, Dak Prescott and Jake Ferguson at cost, is completely fine. One backfield, though, that is also a little bit murky, but we think there's going to be some fantasy scoring out of it. The Liam Cohen offense the Jacksonville Jaguars. What's been your approach to this backfield? Any sort of coach speak that we can unpack here when we're talking about Tank Bigsby, Travis Etienne, and Bashal Tutin?
Super, super interesting backfield. You know, in fantasy, we want things to be super clean and know that this is the guy, but that's not always going to be the case. We saw in Liam Cohen's backfield last year that, wow, Bucky Irving looks incredible, but it took until kind of the midway point of the season for them to really give him all the RB1 stuff there. So that's maybe something that we see this year. I think we could see that with Bashal Tutin, who, you know, has not played a ton in camp, was hampered a little bit by an injury, has played in these 2 preseason games, looks pretty good. Now he's running against backups, but he's also in with backups as well. That talent profile is just something that I want to bet on. This is a guy that James Gladstone, when, you know, during his interview with the Jags before he even got the job, highlighted Bashal Tutin as a guy that he wanted to draft. That speaks pretty loudly to me. The Travis Etienne stuff, the way that they're talking about him is a little bit more like third down, kind of like screens, jet sweeps, that sort of thing that doesn't scream workhorse to me. I know people got all crazy about him getting, you know, all the ones stuff in their first preseason game, but like I think it was Jacob Sanderson pointed out, that's not how things will be done in season. How we saw it in the second preseason game was kind of more how things are, of where you're kind of mixing and matching. That first preseason game was just, okay, this player gets all the snaps on this drive, this next player gets all the snaps on this next drive, and so on and so forth. And that's something that obviously changed in the second preseason game. So people want it to be clean. I don't think it's gonna be clean. I have a pretty good fade on Travis Etienne at his current ADP. I think the way that he burns me is if he gets traded to another team and he's their RB1 there, say it was like a Dallas, or I mean, I don't know if Chicago is a great example, because I do think they'll use Swift a bit there. But I think that's the one way he burns me. Tank Bigsby, he is a good runner. I do think that Liam Cohen likes the way that he runs, but Liam Cohen has also talked about how he has a long way to go still in pass protection. And yeah, it's open, man. It's an open competition, truly, in that backfield. And in that case, I think you just want to bet on the talent. And people say, oh, well, Travis Etienne, former first-round pick. Okay, there's a lot of former first-round picks. There's former first-round picks from not too many years ago that are just not in the NFL anymore. That doesn't make him a good player. I don't think he even looked good before the injury last season. And we get the reports a couple months ago that this franchise might not be so high on Travis Etienne. They draft not just one running back, they draft 2 running backs. That's not a great vote of confidence in your running back room that you currently had going into the draft. So yeah, I think maybe we take a closer look at who was handpicked by this regime, and Bashal Tutin is going later than both Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne. So I love him as a best ball pick. I like him as a stash and redraft.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Tutin, if you have like just a swing for the fences, a player that can develop, and you stick him on your bench, and then potentially he's a takeover candidate at some point in the season, I think that is there. I think if I need running back scoring early in the year, Tank Bigsby is going to get sort of a predictable weekly workload, whereas ETN might be a little more game flow specific if it's sort of a pass catching role. Neutral game script, I think Tank Bigsby is going to be very valuable to drafters early. But like you said, there's some limitations for him as a pass blocker. And despite his sort of collegiate production as a pass catcher, that has hardly translated at all. So Tutin gives you sort of a contingent handcuff to both of these players, with the potential that he could do both roles. So and Tutin, you factor in the athleticism, he becomes a very, very interesting click. But I am sort of with you. I'm also mixing in a little bit of Tank Bigsby, and I think he'll be utilized, especially early on as a runner. Talk about the New York Jets. Braylon Allen, Breece Hall, Isaiah Davis when he comes back. This is starting to look a little murky here. Breece Hall's falling into the 4th round. He's never averaged fewer than 15 points per game. Braylon Allen is creeping up, moving up and up and up in ADP. Starting to see occasional 9th round, 8th round exposure to Braylon Allen in some managed leagues. Where are you at with this one? Specifically, your enthusiasm levels for Breece Hall. How much are you mixing him in for the rest of August?
Yeah, so I was pretty big on Breece Hall. I do think he's the better running back, considerably of this backfield. But here's the thing: what I think about a player and how much they should be utilized, it doesn't matter as much as what a coach thinks. And Aaron Glenn keeps talking up Braylon Allen and talking about utilizing all of these guys. On March 31st, he said, quote, "I would say that we have 3 running backs on this team that we're going to utilize as much as possible. They're all big men. They can run. They're violent. They're physical." End quote. Glenn went on to say that it could be a 1-2-3 punch. On July 28th, Aaron Glenn said Braylon Allen is a 240-pound man that's always falling forward. He's going to make his money in short yardage and downhill running. That's going to weigh on defensive players. So I don't love that for Breece Hall's potential goal line role. And then on August 2nd, Aaron Glenn was asked about the benefit of using 2 or 3 running backs. He said, when it comes to our guys, the skill set is different for the most part. When a defense has to plan for those skill sets, it's hard. Quote, "You can do a lot with Breece, and I'm going to tell you, we're going to open his game up quite a bit. And I've said this before, he's the type of guy that you can split out wide and let him run the route tree because he can run it like a receiver. And I like that matchup with him against a safety or linebacker too. With Braylon, man, you just pound it. I mean, he's a 240-pound man that's going to be hard to bring down." End quote. Aaron Glenn then made a comparison/reference to the 2 totally different skill sets of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And of course, we know that Aaron Glenn came from Detroit last season. And then finally, he was asked about what Isaiah Davis brings. Glenn said he brings everything. He's a guy that we have to make sure we get on the field as much as possible. Also, pass protection, his ability to run, his route tree. He's a very, very smart player. He's tough. He's aggressive. And he plays on dang near every special teams that we have. He's a valuable piece of what we're trying to do. Valuable.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. And I've certainly been a Braylon Allen guy. I think it's sort of sticking with me at this point. I'm glad that my Braylon Allen bags are packed. The David Montgomery role for Allen, I think, could be a really valuable one because it's an offense that's going to want to run the ball a lot. And I don't think that Breece Hall is Jahmyr Gibbs in this offense. I think that Breece Hall has been a great player for us in fantasy. If they fully commit to him as a 20% target share player, then he's going to deliver. But I think with Braylon Allen, you're looking at Breece Hall conceding the goal line work, and now just how much of the rushing share goes to him. I think it's viable where if I was coaching the team, maybe you were coaching the team, there would be a role for Breece Hall that was just fantastic. He'd get a ton of targets, he'd get his carries, and then we'd sort of mix in Allen. I worry a little bit that it might end up being something like a 16% target share, and we don't have that full-on hit. Now, that being said, if you're drafting multiple teams, you want to get yourself some Breece Hall in the 4th round. And Greg, you're starting to see it because right now he's going behind James Cook as the running back 15. Travion Henderson behind him at running back 16 is going to leapfrog him any moment. You're already seeing it in a lot of drafts where Henderson goes ahead of him. Obviously it's ADP, so it's going to take a few more, but I would give it a day or two. Henderson will leapfrog Hall. And then you've got a guy like Kenneth Walker, where we have that enthusiasm about the system. Even though Walker is dealing with being a slightly banged up, you might have a little bit more comfort level than maybe Breece Hall managers have now. So I do think you'll see more and more Breece Hall 4th round picks. You're seeing it now pretty often. I wonder if it's become sort of the norm when we get to the end of the month, especially in like FFPC. Underdog, we're already there. So definitely one to monitor for the rest of the month. Talk about Jalen Coker. Jalen Coker, good at football, Greg. What's his chances of making an impact this year?
I think it's pretty good. He started playing significant snaps in week 5 of his rookie season last year. And then from week 10 on, when he was healthy, he played at least 82% of snaps. He obliterated man coverage last year. As Jacob Gibbs pointed out, Jalen Coker led all receivers in yards per catchable target versus man coverage in 2024. He can play all 3 spots on the field. He played mainly at X last season, but also played some big slot. There was some Carolina beat reporter several weeks ago who speculated that Jalen Coker may not make the 53-man roster, which is just a highly absurd thing to say. Coker is making less than $1 million. He may already be their second best receiver there. There are many good beat writers out there, and then there are just some that know absolutely zero ball whatsoever. On July 28th, Dave Canales said Jalen Coker has had such a great camp so far. He's bursting at the top of his routes. He's creating separation. He's finding edges. On August 6th, Canales said Jalen Coker came back a different athlete this year. He's got a plan. He's got a routine. This is not too big for Jalen. And then finally, Dave Canales was asked on August 11th whether Jalen Coker has made enough plays to make the team. Canales said, we're going to play the best guys, the guys that we can count on, the guys that make plays, the guys that make the catch. Jalen has really showed to be one of the more reliable guys that we have, whether it's contested or he's open in space. He plays strong to the ball. He had 2 really amazing plays and a go ball in practice today. If he keeps showing us that, he's going to be on the field playing. There's no doubt about it. Now, there are coaches in the NFL who will keep starting players who should no longer be starting. Dave Canales is quick to make changes when he thinks it's going to benefit his team. We saw that with Bryce Young last year. 2 games into the season, in his first year as a head coach, Dave Canales benched Bryce Young for Andy Dalton. A very, very quick hook there. So if he thinks that Jalen Coker is the second best receiver or the third best receiver on the Panthers, Jalen Coker is going to be playing a lot of snaps there. And for as late as you can get him, he is such an incredible pick in best ball. I think he's a very, very good pick in redraft because you can just wait and see, okay, is he going to be playing that 80+% of snaps that he was playing last season? Is he going to take over this number 3 spot or this number 2 spot from Xavier Legette? And if he does, you have a weekly starter on your hands, a very, very good player. And you could at least just, use fantasy points data, look at, the team that they're playing this week is a very heavy man coverage team. All right, let's put Jalen Coker in the lineup here.
Yeah, I love your take. And you bring up Xavier Legette. Last year, you had to see Xavier Legette for like the entire second half of the season. They obviously used the first round draft pick on him. But now in year 2, where you've got Coker head-to-head with Legette, I think it's going to come down to who's the better player. Ted McMillan is going to be the alpha in this offense. I think Coker has a chance to outscore Xavier Legette this season and it really be a undrafted free agent versus a first-round pick. Holy Cross versus the SEC. Sort of a very, very cool storyline there. Let's talk about Chicago, lightning round here. Who is the best ADP option among the Chicago pass catching weapons? Both rookies with DJ Moore, Rome Odunze. If you had to pick one to put a chip in on this season, go for it. And it's okay if you say two, Greg. I know you're probably mixing up exposures.
Well, yeah. Okay. So I will say 2. It's the 2 who are going the latest.
Okay, there you go.
Colston Loveland, who has the tight end eligibility. And once again, people are just afraid to draft rookie tight ends, right? Brock Bowers last season was going around pick 100 or so as the 13th overall pick. This year, Tyler Warren, the 15th overall pick, is going like 105. Colston Loveland, the 10th overall pick. That's huge draft capital that the Bears spent on Colston Loveland. He's going to play so much this year. He's going to be a big part of this offense for them. Their head coach, Ben Johnson, is talking about how they want to get Caleb Williams to this 70% completion percentage. The number one thing on offense for them is raising the passing EPA for Caleb Williams, and they want to do that through short, intermediate passes to guys who get a lot of yak. And that is absolutely what Colston Loveland is. Another big yak guy for Chicago is Luther Burden. This is a guy that has fallen just very hard in drafts. He got the injury during OTAs that prevented him from being available at the very beginning of training camp. He's a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of getting up to speed. Olamide Zaccheaus has been playing in front of him, but I just don't think that's something that we should really worry about, because Luther Burden is a much, much better prospect. He's much better talent than Olamide Zaccheaus. He may not be as up to speed as Olamide Zaccheaus is right now, but he is going to get there. And then last night, or in this second preseason game, we see Luther Burden just absolutely laying the wood on guys as a blocker when the Bears were running the ball at the goal line. And that is huge. And Ryan Poles, the general manager, was talking about it on the broadcast. The announcers brought this up with him about the blocking. And Ryan Poles said, you were not seeing that, earlier in this offseason. Like, that's not something that he was doing. So the fact that he's doing it now, that's really good for his prospects of being able to get on the field.
What's your comfort level with Emeka Egbuka? It looks like Chris Godwin on the PUP list, at least to start the season. And the vibes are not great when it comes to Chris Godwin health-wise, sort of bouncing back from that injury. Factor in age 29. Emeka Egbuka is rising and rising. Every time I do a podcast, he seems to move up at least one spot. If he moves up to, say, wide receiver 30, is this still a player you want to keep clicking the button on the rest of the summer?
My comfort level with Emeka Egbuka is I'm wrapped in a down feather comforter that was just taken out of the dryer. That's how comfortable I am with him.
I love it.
It's sort of a cliche for coaches and general managers to say that a player is ahead of schedule in their rehab. But whenever the Bucs have been asked about Chris Godwin, it's been a lot of he's on schedule and we're hoping for week 1. And then recently, general manager Jason Light was asked on August 5th whether Chris Godwin will begin the season on PUP. And he said, quote, "We don't know yet," end quote. And then head coach Todd Bowles was asked on August 10th which of the 5 players, including Chris Godwin and Tristan Wirfs, that started on the PUP or NFI list are close to returning. And he said Anthony Walker is close. That's the only one that's close to returning. So, yeah, I'm very much in on Emeka Egbuka. He gets this big role immediately to start the season. We also saw Jalen McMillan take a pretty nasty hit on his head, landing on his head in week 2 of the preseason. Emeka Egbuka is just a baller guy.
Yes.
This is a guy that their general manager, Jason Light, after they drafted him, said, I was going to throw up if we did not get Emeka Egbuka. That's the kind of guy that I want to be drafting.
There's a lot of fantasy managers who will throw up when they don't get Emeka Egbuka in their drafts. And if you're listening to this show, don't let ADP be the guide. If you want Emeka Egbuka, go and reach for him. Go and get your guys when you start getting into that range of drafts, 6th round. Go and get your guys. I was able to get Emeka Egbuka at the 7-10 in an FFPC 125 best ball draft this past weekend. I felt like I robbed a bank afterwards, Greg. I feel like it slipped through the cracks. I almost took him at like the early 6th, and I just felt sick to my stomach that I passed over for a running back for a structural pick, and then Egbuka comes all the way back to me. So gotta love those kind of storylines. Every single guest on School of Scott, and Greg, you've been on School of Scott. Big shout out to the work you've done with Scott Barrett. The show you just hosted with Scott on your channel, awesome stuff. Highly recommend it. But every guest on School of Scott, every guest on Fantasy Football Daily, I ask them one question to end the show. Give me a bold prediction for the 2025 fantasy football season.
Tyler Warren finishes in the top 4 tight ends.
I love it. Let me know once again where they can find you.
At CoachSpeak Index on Twitter, and then obviously the CoachSpeak Index Discord. I am in there all day, putting in all these important notes that you need to know for fantasy and betting.
Highly recommend CoachSpeak Index. Highly recommend everything Greg's putting out. Highly recommend that you subscribe to the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. If you're listening to this on the pod, if you're watching this on Fantasy Points YouTube, subscribe to our podcast as well. It helps us out a lot. School of Scott. Scott and I are going to be joined by Matthew Berry this week. Make sure you check that out. Dynasty Life. I was joined by Jax Falcone. And Fantasy Football Daily, our next episode, Scott Barrett and I will be drafting an FFPC $2,000 entry main event team, trying to win $1 million, Greg. We'll give you a shout out. You'll come to the after party when we take down that $1 million. We'll talk to you soon. Stick with us at Fantasy Points. We're going to help you crush your leagues this season.